Please be seated. The court is now in session. For today's proceeding, we continue to hear the testimony of the witness So Suchit. And after, we will hear the testimony of the witness TCW 648. Judge Parry, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceeding? Judge Parry, Mr. President, all parties are present today. As for Noon Chi, he is present in the holding cell downstairs, pursuant to the decision of the trial chamber concerning his health. There are two witnesses appearing before this chamber today. For the morning session, we will continue to hear the testimony of the witness So Suchit, who is already present in the courtroom, and the second witness is TCW 648. This witness is also present. We also have a reserve witness as stated in A through 88. This witness is a new witness, so there is no pseudonym for this witness. President, thank you. The floor is now given to the prosecution to continue putting questions to this witness. You are granted a maximum of 25 minutes. So tailor your questions accordingly. You may proceed.
Mr. President, Your Honours, may it please you, good morning, and good morning to my fellow counsel. I'd like to start, please, by referring to a telegram. The E number is E282.1.19. This is a telegram of the 8th of October, 1974. The telegram is from sources in the United States, and at paragraph 7 there is the following entry, and I quote: Grunk, acting Prime Minister and Army Commander Khieu Samphan, has issued a series of appeals to youths, students and intellectuals, to troops and police, to monks and to government personnel. The radio appeals set forth his views of GKR economic difficulties and territorial losses, and about the determination to fight on. And he asks listeners to rise up, raid rice storehouses, shoot GKR officials, or at the least not do anything physically or morally which may give encouragement to the traitorous clique. End quote. Madam Sosochir, I'll repeat the question. Did you ever hear your husband issuing appeals to shoot officials from the former regime?
No, I never heard that.
Thank you. Next, I refer to telegram of the 31st of December, 1974. It is E number 282.1.22.
President, International Council for Kirsampon, you may proceed.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, je n'ai pas voulu.
I did not wish to intervene on the first question, Mr. President. I have no objection in principle to that question being put to the witness, but there are a certain number of rules that your chamber has set, including prior communication by parties of documents that they intend to use when questioning witnesses. And the first telegram that was cited by the prosecutor is not on the interface. The second is not on the interface either. The prosecutor yesterday claimed at the end of the afternoon's hearing that he had another 3 pages of questions, and I find it hard to believe that on the 3 pages there are documents that are not on the interface. So I'm a little puzzled about what is going on here. Is the prosecutor authorized to use documents that have not been signaled in advance? I'm asking the chamber if it would kindly take a decision on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. President, the position is this, that these documents were not downloaded by me last night. They were being discussed by me and others in transport back from the court last night. I accept I could at 10 o'clock last night, or perhaps at 6 o'clock this morning, put them on the interface. I apologise to my learned friend that that was not done. These are, in my respectful submission, important documents. And the importance of these telegrams as a body of documents is illustrated by the fact that my learned friend's defence team have submitted a motion to the trial chamber saying that these telegrams are also relevant from their point of view. So I do ask to continue with my apologies to my learned friend for not putting these on the interface last night.
President, yes, Council, you may proceed.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Very briefly, Mr. President, I do believe, moreover, that these are WikiLeaks telegrams, which have been the subject of 2 requests on both sides of the aisle, and which have been part of an announcement about a future refusal by your chamber.
Mr. President, could I ask for very brief permission to be heard, please?
President, the prosecution, you are reminded once again that your time that we granted is very limited, so please try not to raise any controversy issues during the limited time that you have been allocated. You better use the appropriate documents that have been accepted by the chamber. And regarding the document that you just quoted, could you please enlighten the court on the source of that document, or is the suggestion made by the counsel is correct?
Mr. President, can I explain that these are declassified documents obtained, we call them the WikiLeaks documents. They bear unclassified markings. They have been legally declassified. And my learned friend's correct that both the Office of the Co-Prosecutors and the Q-Sompon team submit that these documents are relative and probative evidence in this case. Can I move on, please, to another topic?
President, prosecutor, please move on. And disregard your previous question regarding the objected document.
Thank you. Madam Sosachir, do I have this right that after the occupation of Phnom Penh, you stayed at the Silver Pagoda for some months, and that it was probably mid or late 1975 that you went to K1?
I left Silver Pagoda to K1 first and not to K3, but I cannot recall the number of months.
In your evidence before the court on the 10th of June, and I refer to the transcript with the time marker 14.37.46, you stated this, and I quote, "I stayed at the Silver Pagoda for some months. it was probably till mid or late 1975, then I went to K1. Was that answer you gave accurate?
Yes, that is correct.
In your testimony on the same day, time marker 14.40.21, you stated that K1 was the workplace for the leaders. Leaders like Pol Pot, Nguyen Chia, they lived there, and some other people. Khieu Samphan stayed there with Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia, didn't he?
Yes.
When you referred to some other people staying there with Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia, who are these other people?
At that time, I did not know everybody. I knew for certain of Pol Pot, Nguyen Chia, Khieu Samphan, Ieng Sari. As for the rest, I didn't know them well. I only knew through the food that I cooked, there were a number of other people there.
In your testimony with time marking also at 14.43.36, you said that people came to Phnom Penh from the base to K1. How often did people from the base come to K1 when your husband was together with the other leaders there?
I cannot recall the frequency of their appearance. Based on the food that I prepared, sometimes I had to prepare more food, and sometimes I prepared less food. And some other times there were only a few of them.
Were you head of the kitchens at K1?
No.
Who was head of the kitchens?
Excusez-moi, confrère.
Witness, please wait. The counsel, you may proceed.
On n'a pas eu la...
Just to say that we didn't get the prosecutor's question because of the time lag on the interpretation. I only heard the answer, Mr. President.
If I recap, I asked the question, were you the head of the kitchens at K1, and the answer was no. And the question I've just asked that I repeat, Madam Sosutiet, who was head of the kitchens at K1 if it wasn't you?
At that time, I was not told who was the head of the kitchen.
Who was in charge of cooking the meals when the leaders from the base came?
នៅពេលដែលមេដឹកនាំមកពីមូលដ្ឋានមកមន្ទីរកមួយនោះ
There was the wife of Nuon Chea who was present there.
Were you head of the kitchens at K3?
តើលោកស្រីជាប្រធានផ្នែកដាំស្លនៅមន្ទីរក3ដែរទេ
No, I was not.
In document number E3/16, which is chapter 5 of a book written by your husband, English ERN 00498-280, French 0064-3886, and Khmer
President, Council, you may proceed.
Oui,
I'm sorry to interrupt once again, but we are once again looking at a document that has not been announced to us in advance.
President, Prosecutor, could you clarify the matter regarding the documents that you referred to in your question? And please be reminded once again that we grant you a very limited time, and you better use the time efficiently and with the proper documents, the documents that have been placed before the chamber.
This document is on the Rule 80 list. It has been referred to already in evidence in this trial. It was not downloaded to the interface. Am I able to refer to this document or not? I want to quote one sentence consisting of 12 words.
President, you may now refer to this document as the document has been referred to already for questioning other witnesses.
I think I was halfway through the Khmer ERN. Can I repeat that? 00380-459/60. So this is your husband, Mrs. Sosachir, writing this in a book. And I quote, "My wife was in charge of the kitchen." Is he telling the truth?
Yes.
Do you accept that you have just been mistaken in your first reply to me when you said you were not head of the kitchen?
President and witness, please wait. The National Council for Case Sampon, you may proceed. Council, thank you, Mr. President. I object to the question by the prosecutor. In fact, it is the prosecutor who was mistaken regarding the response of the witness. The witness actually agreed to the question put through her by the prosecutor that she was in charge of cooking. And to be in charge of cooking is different from to be the chief of the kitchen. That is for your consideration, Your Honor.
Your Honour, the question I first asked was, were you head of the kitchens at K1? And the answer was no. I'm going to move on. Now, Madam Sosochia, you...
President, the objection and ground for the objection is unfounded, and witness, you are instructed to respond to the last question put to you by the prosecutor.
My last question was, do you accept that you were mistaken when you said you were not head of the kitchen?
I was not the head, so that is incorrect.
You said in your evidence on the 10th of June, time marker 14.46.03, and this is dealing with the move from K1 to K3. Most of the leaders went to K3, and like him, Q Sampon, he left for K3 before me, and that was probably in late 1975 or early 1976. Was your previous answer that I have just read accurate?
I am sorry, Mr. President, I do not understand the question by the prosecutor. The President, Mr. Prosecutor, can you please repeat your question? As I advised yesterday, that the question be succinct and easy to understand by the witness. Please be aware of that. Try to avoid a complicated question that make the witness difficult to understand, so he or she might not be able to respond to your question.
Madam Sosochiet, did your husband leave K1 for K3 in late 1975, early 1976?
That is correct.
Did you follow him about 2 or 3 months after he had left?
Yes, that is correct.
And is it right that you and your husband stayed for 4 or 5 months at K3 before the exodus when the leaders left?
Yes, that is right.
Was it therefore in 1976 when you say the leaders left?
The President. Mr. Prosecutor, can you please repeat your last question and please refer to a specific office, for example, K3 or K1 or so, rather than using these, because I would like you to make sure that you refer to any specific office so that the witness can respond appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Sosochia, did the senior leaders leave K3 in 1976, leaving you and your husband at K3?
Yes, that is correct.
After the leaders left, did your husband ever complain to you that the other leaders were having meetings behind his back?
No, he did not.
I want to move on to another topic. It may be my final topic, given the timings from the court. Do you remember Sulvasi, alias Duan?
I can only recall the name Dun. I never know Sulvasi.
Did you ever leave food on the table for him?
Yes, I did.
Was it at which location did you leave food on the table for Duan?
It was at K3.
Did you know Duan's wife?
No, I didn't.
In what year did you first see Duan?
It was in K3 in 1976. It could have been 1976, to the best of my recollection, but I don't recollect the exact date.
Did you ever see Duan in 1977?
I do not recollect.
Did you ever discuss Duan with your husband?
No, I didn't.
How many times did you leave food on the table for Duan?
Relatively many times, but I do not recall exactly how many times, but there were many occasions.
Did you ever at meal times see your husband sat at the table talking with Duan?
No, I never saw him talk to Dun, but of course they chatted with each other.
Were Duan and your husband reasonably good friends?
ក្នុងឋានៈជជែកជាមិត្តភក្តិនឹងគ្នាធម្មតាដែរឬទេ
You know, it was an everyday chit chat between the two of them.
Did there come a time when you discussed with your husband that Duan wasn't coming to eat and wasn't there?
No, nobody told me.
In the document I've already referred to, E3/16, and I have given the ERNs already, your husband said in this book the following, and I quote, "My wife was in charge of the kitchen and left food on the table for him. Very frequently, he was not seen to come to eat. After a long time, we seemed to get used to this situation." Close quote. So is your husband right when he says that you and him got used to the situation of Duan not eating at K3?
Yes, he is right.
So you did discuss Duan with your husband, and you did discuss that he was no longer at K3. Is that correct?
The President, witness, please hold on. Counsel, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Samon. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object against this question. I believe that this question is leading in nature, and in addition, she has not made any statement that she had discussed with Mr. Kyu Sampon on the disappearance of Duan, so I would like to object against this question on this basis. Thank you, Mr. President. The President, Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Sorry, Mr. President, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Mr. President, for the third time in this case, my learned friend, the National Counsel for Kyu Sampon, is misrepresenting answers given by her. I will have an application in this regard at the end of this portion. The question I asked earlier was as follows. Did there come a time when you discussed with Kyu Sampon that Duan wasn't coming to eat and wasn't there? And the answer was no. Nobody told me. So please, this cannot continue with my learned friend misrepresenting evidence and making objections. Can I please repeat the question, Mr. President?
Well, the President, The objection and ground for objection by the National Defense Counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon is not appropriate and then not sustained. And the counsel, please be advised that you should refrain from putting such an objection. And witness is now directed to respond to the last question by the prosecutor. Witness, could you please repeat your last question?
So, you did discuss Duan with Kyu Sampon, and you discussed that he was no longer at K3. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, I did not make mention that he was no longer there, but I asked, Duan did not come for his meal. I ever asked him such a question, but then my husband told me that just left it there, he might come. So that's what our conversation was all about Duan.
So, after your husband told you to leave it there, he might come, did you continue putting food out for Duan?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because I did not know whether he would come or not. He was on and off, and I had to prepare food in case I could not prepare it in time when he appeared.
Did you keep preparing food for him into 1977?
After a while, then I stopped preparing such meal. But nobody told me. I decided to stop it.
Did you ever find out what happened to Duan?
No, I didn't.
The S21 prisoner list at E3/347 shows 342, shows Duan being arrested on the 16th of February 1977. Did you ever get to know that Duan had been arrested at any time?
No, I didn't.
Out of the wives of Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Ieng Sary, and Son Sen, which of those wives were you closest to?
I was closest to Nuon Chea's wife because we were working in the kitchen together at the time.
After the exodus of the leaders in 1976 from K3, how much did you see of Nuon Chea's wife?
I met her occasionally.
Where did you meet her?
សំណួរតើលោកស្រីបានជួបគាត់នៅកន្លែងណា
នៅកមួយម្ដង
Occasionally at K1, and she would also come to K3 occasionally too.
After the exodus of the senior leaders, who did your children spend time with, apart from you and your husband?
ចំណាយពេលជាមួយកូនរបស់លោកស្រីក្រៅពីប្តីរបស់លោកស្រីនិងលោកស្រីបាទបានន័យថាអ្នកណាជាអ្នកមើលកូនរបស់លោកស្រីនោះ
ចាអត់មានទេ
No, none.
Mr. President, I'm conscious of the time. I think I have had my allotted time. Mr. President, can I please indicate this? There is a legal application that I made yesterday that has not yet been ruled upon. Is it convenient that I deal with this now or after my learned friends from the civil parties have asked their questions? Sorry, Mr. President, it's in relation to the behaviour of Khieu Sampan's National Council.
ចំពោះមេធាវីការពារក្តីជាតិរបស់លោកមេលោកខៀវសំផនផងដែរបាទ
The President. Thank you. For this application, the Chamber will decide on this application after hearing hearing other parties. Now I hand over the floor to the lead co-lawyers for the civil parties. Counsel Pik Ong. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. The delegated lawyer was Mr. Hong Kum Soon. He will put the question to the witness first and followed by Madame Simone Ford. The President, you may proceed. Counsel Hong Kum Soon. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Venerable monks and everyone in and around the courtroom. I am Hong Kum Soon. I am the lawyer for the civil party. Good morning, Madame So Suchiet. I have a few questions. I am seeking your enlightenment. Over the last 2 days, you have testified in court concerning your life and work together with Mr. Khieu Sampon. I would like to begin my questions by going back a little bit to the period after the coup d'etat in 1970. Back then, you were living in Pravihir province. Is that correct? Response: that is correct. Thank you. Question: you said that you were later became the village medic, and then you later joined the revolution by An Jim. Could you please enlighten the court in relation to the meaning of participating in the revolution, and what did participation in revolution entail? Response: with permission from Mr. President, I would like to answer to this question as follows. Following the coup d'etat in 1970, it could have been in mid-1970. There was an uncle by the name of Yim. He came to our village. Council interrupts. I know this history, but I just would like you to emphasize on the point on the joining of revolution and what it entailed. Please enlighten the court on this point only. Response. At that time, they indoctrinated us, and there were many women participating. They used the rationale that Prince Norodom Sihanouk were ousted of power, and there were infiltrating imperialist forces as well as the colonial forces taking power in Cambodia. And then after that, they educated us that we had to endeavor to regain our independence. And in order to regain independence, we have to join revolution. And I did not understand what revolution was all about at that time. We, according to them, joining revolution meant that we had to be willing to sacrifice in order to join resistance forces. For this reason, we should be self-conscious whether or not we were willing to take part in the struggle. Council interrupts. I am sorry, Madam, for interrupting you, but in the interest of time, I had to move on. When you joined the revolution, what was your role in that revolution? Were you, for example, a unit chief or a squad chief or team leader or so? Response. No, back then I was not appointed with any position. I was a mere village medic. Question. When after you joined revolution, then you moved to Chinit and you cook for the leaders. But did you still hold your position as a medic at the time? Response. Back then I was a medic. I actually was a cook. And I was a medic too. Question. Was you a medic for the leaders or for general public? Well, I was a medic for ordinary members in that place. Question. You said you were a cook. Did you prepare meals for leaders? Response. Yes. I have prepared food for them. There were other cooks. I only assisted them. Question. In the area where you were living near Stung Chinit, was there any code number attached to this location? Response. At that time, it was called Stung Chinit office. I did not know whether there was a code number. I did not have any interest in knowing that. Question. Do you still recall who the leader was at that place? Response. Back then, Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Khieu Samphan, and then later Son Sen and his wife joined them too. That was it. Thank you. Question. You got married to your husband, Mr. Khieu Samphan. At that time of your marriage, did you know that he was Khieu Samphan? The President. Witness, please hold on. Mr. Counsel, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Sumon, I would like to object to this question because it is repetitive. The witness in question has already said that he did not know who Khieu Samphan was. He only knew him as Ham. The President, thank you. The objection by the National Defense Council for Mr. Khieu Samphan is appropriate because this question is repetitive. The lawyer for the civil party must not have grasped the discussion over the last few days, and witness needs not respond to this question. Thank you, Mr. President, say Counsel Hong Kim Soon. I would like to move on to the next question.
Before the liberation of Phnom Penh on the 17th April 1975, you stated before this court that you followed your husband to Sdok Tao. And how long or how many months did you spend before you returned to Phnom Penh? In fact, I did not follow my husband to Sdok Tao. 1 week after the liberation, I came to Phnom Penh and I met him at Sdok Tao. And I met him overnight there. Thank you. Question. From which direction did you enter Phnom Penh? I didn't know the route that I traveled. Question. Your journey from Sdok Tao to Phnom Penh, how did you travel? And who actually led you into Phnom Penh? The name was Sam, and I was on a motorbike through an unpaved road. Sam was the one who led me on a motorbike. Question. Along the road, did you see Phnom Penh residents who were exiting Phnom Penh? Answer, no. You already stated and provided a lot of information before this court, and I would like to clarify on certain points. While you were living in Phnom Penh, that is after the liberation of 17 April 1975, until such time you lived with your husband in K1 or K3, can you tell the court that your relatives who were detained in Siem Reap was by the name of Yip? Answer. My cousin's name was Yip. Question. Yesterday, on the 11th of June 2013, you stated before this court that when your father or your mother was sent to Tak Mau, if I'm not mistaken, you said that they were detained in Tak Mau. Is this correct? Answer. You are mistaken. They were taken to Siem Reap, but after they released all those detainees, including Egypt, that is my cousin, were sent to Takmau. Thank you. Question. You also stated before this court that when you met your cousin in Takmau, you actually went there secretly by taking a ride with a car transporting goods. My question to you is, were there any checkpoints along the way, and were you stopped and questioned? Answer. No, there was none. Question. Can you tell us, during the period of Democratic Cambodia, did you need travel authorization before you can make any trip? Answer. I didn't know whether there was such a travel authorization. Question. Did you ever hear that your husband was also referred to as Kang? No, I did not. I move on to another topic regarding your cooking in the kitchen. You just stated before this court regarding your cooking in the kitchen for your husband. Were the cooks or people who work in the kitchens the wives of the leaders, for example, the wife of Noon Chi and Son Sen, who worked and cooked with you in the kitchen? Answer. No, that's not correct. There was Noon Chi's wife and his nephew, and there were 2 or 3 other people working there. Thank you. Besides cooking, did you know whether your husband's job was to do with the authority at the leadership level? Answer. No, I did not. Question. When your husband went for any meeting with the leadership, did he ever tell you? He only told me, for instance, that he needed to go to K1 but he did not tell me whether he would go there for a meeting or some other task. Question. Did you ever hear your husband complain about the disappearance of people or about the arrest within that unit? Answer. No. Question. During the Democratic Cambodia period, in particular in Office K1 or K3 where you resided and worked, regarding the maintaining of secrecy, which means that mind your own business, so you only focus on your work and the rest they focus only on their work. Is this correct? Yes, it is. Question. Am I correct to say that the nature of your husband's work is his secrecy that he has to maintain, and Pol Pot's work is his own work, and that they did not reveal the nature of their work to one another? Answer: I only knew the principle, but I did not know the details. Thank you. My last question to you. After the fall of the Democratic Cambodia regime, that is after the 7th of January 1979, had you heard or knew about the tragedy happened under the Khmer Rouge regimes, that is the loss of millions of Cambodian lives? Answer: while I lived in K3, I never heard about that, or I was never told about the death. But later on, I knew about it. Question: and upon hearing that, did you believe that a great tragedy took place during the Democratic Cambodia regime? Answer: yes, I do. Question: do you believe that during the Democratic Cambodia period, the leadership level was aware of the great tragedy? President and witness, please wait. Counsel, you may proceed. Kung Sum On, thank you, Mr. President. I am objecting to this question. It is a question that elicits a personal conclusion from this witness, and that is not within the capacity of this witness. This witness was a cook at the time, so the questionings during her testimony should be within that field. Thank you. Counsel, Mr. President, I do not have any further question, and I'd like to cede the floor to my international counterpart. President, yes, you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours, and good morning to all of the parties. Good morning too to you, Madam. I have a few questions to put to you, and I don't have much time, so I would ask you please to try and respond in as precise a way as possible and with concision. And I'm questioning you as the wife of Kyo Sompan rather than as a cook. Madam, you told us on the 10th of June that you had pursued your studies to the 5th year. That was slightly after 11:40 and 25 seconds. So can we take it that the educational level you have is fairly good for that period in time and for the fact that it was in the countryside?
Yes.
Je vous remercie. Vous avez dit le...
Thank you. On the first day, and on the second day, and just now to my learned colleague, you said that you were engaged in the revolutionary struggle, and you explained why it was necessary to combat the imperialists. Is it accurate to say that in doing this you were preoccupied by the politics of your country, and that at that period in time national politics interested you?
Pardon me, I could not catch your question. President, lead co-lawyer, please repeat your last question as the witness could not get your question.
Oui, bien sûr.
Of course, Mr. President. On several occasions in the last 2 days in this courtroom, you have told us that you were committed to the revolutionary struggle to combat the imperialists. I would like to ask you, is it fair to say that the situation in Cambodia preoccupied you, and that's why you signed up to the struggle?
Yes, that is correct.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. On the 10th of June, at 3:20 and 23 seconds, you explained the conditions in which you accommodated. You and your husband were accommodated in K3. You shed a few tears, and you said that the house was not in a state worthy of human habitation. And so my question is this. At that time, did you hear anything about the living conditions and the accommodation and food and labor conditions of people who have been deported from Phnom Penh to the rural areas?
At that time, I did not know about that.
Est-ce que madame...
And madam, have you heard or read what was said from the 27th of May to the 4th of June this year, when civil parties came to explain what life was like in the cooperatives to this court?
No, I did not follow the proceedings.
Est-ce que cela nous...
And was it of no interest to you to hear people explaining what it was like?
Later on, I knew about the condition. President, witness, please wait. Counsel, you may proceed. Actually, the witness already responded. President, lead caller, you may continue.
Je ne crois pas que le témoin avait répondu à cette question.
I don't believe that we had an answer there, but it doesn't matter. Madam, I'd like to talk to you about speeches made by your husband. You said yesterday that you didn't listen to the 21st of April 1975 speech. At the time, did you listen to other speeches delivered by your husband? For example, the one he gave on the anniversary of the liberation of Phnom Penh, or on other occasions?
I never listened to any speech as I was busy with my own work.
Est-ce que vous écoutiez la radio à l'époque?
And in those days, did you listen to the radio, madam?
At the place where I worked, there was no radio.
Est-ce qu'il y avait des réunions?
Were there meetings during which you were all supposed to listen to the radio together to listen to certain speeches, or were there sometimes public address systems which meant that everybody could listen to the same thing at the same time?
At my place, there was no public announcement system.
Et des réunions?
What about the meetings? Do I take it that you went to no meeting whatsoever at which speeches were played?
My apology, I don't get your question.
Madame, est-ce qu'il vous est arrivé?
Madam, between 1975 and 1979, did you ever go to meetings, as many others did who we have heard here, at which speeches by the senior leaders, by your husband or other individuals, were played to the attendees?
No, I never participated in such a meeting.
Très bien.
Very well. In the days before you appeared here, there are two witnesses who came to this court who were children at that time, who said they had lived in K3. Did you yourself notice that there was a group of children, some 10 or 12 of them, in K3, who perhaps you were cooking for as well?
No.
Madame, hier, on vous a montré des...
Yesterday, madam, you were shown some photographs. Was that the first time you saw those photos of your husband at banquets?
Yes, that was the first time that I saw the photos.
Est-ce que par hasard, vous auriez vu...
And by any chance, did you see any other photographs at that time of your husband?
No, I did not.
Madam, yesterday you told Judge Laverne, who was questioning you at 9:46:56 in the French version, And you said to him that at that time his duties were not important. This was not a senior leader. The question, let me say, concerned the period before 1975. I would like to ask you, if before 1975 your husband was not a senior leader, would you say that after 1975 he was?
No, he was not.
Qu'est-ce qu'il était?
What was he then, madam?
I did not know for sure of what he did. He worked at his place, and occasionally he would go to K1, and occasionally he would go to meet with some Dutch. That's what I saw.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I've almost finished. Madam, do I understand correctly that for the last 2 days what you are telling us is that between 1975 and 1979 you knew nothing about the regime and you were merely working as a cook?
Yes, that is correct.
Est-ce que j'ai bien compris?
And do I take it that over the last 2 days you have been telling us that neither during the regime nor after 1979 and the following 30 years, nor now that your husband is sitting in this room as an accused person, have you ever known what the duties of your husband were? Is that what you're telling us?
Whatever you understand, that is your own understanding. I appear here not in order to get to understand how somebody would understand about certain events or certain understanding. So if it is your understanding, of course that's your understanding, it's not mine.
Je ne vous pose pas une question sur la...
I'm not asking a question about how to see things, madam. I'm asking you if you knew absolutely nothing about the functions and duties of your husband at that time and that this is still the case today. I'm asking you if you have said been telling us over the last 2 days that you knew absolutely nothing about what the duties of your husband were.
I still don't get it. because I never thought that he was a senior person.
I think you understood my question extremely well, madam, but I'm going to stop here. I would agree with the prosecutor as he stated it yesterday. To say it politely, I think you're not telling us the truth at all before this chamber, and I regret this very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
President, thank you. And thank you, Madam Sochit. The hearing of your testimony has now concluded, and you may be excused from this courtroom. And the chamber is grateful that you spent your valuable time by appearing before this court for these few sessions with your effort, and we hope that your testimony may contribute to ascertaining the truth, and we wish you all the very best and have a safe trip. President, yes, you may proceed.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to point out that it is completely out of place. Yesterday, we were working on the basis of a common law system and putting questions to the witness and asking her to respond today. Today, we are making comments, making propositions, and asking the spouse to respond, making propositions and saying that this is one of the 5 most important witnesses, and the chamber has not stopped the prosecution from doing so. And this morning, the civil party lead co-lawyer has done the same, and we find this completely out of place.
President, thank you for your observation, Council. Yes, it is an appropriate observation, and we actually reminded all parties already of the proceedings and the practice before this court. And everybody, including all the councils and the prosecutors, should be very familiar with the proceedings and practice. And that should even not happen with the International Council or lead co-lawyer. And Madam Sochit, I noticed that you wish to speak. What is your intention? Sochit, Mr. President, I would like to thank all the judges, the parties, and the prosecutors. And today, before I conclude my testimony, I would like to state that although Your Honors or the prosecutors place accusation upon my husband and that he should be prosecuted, but for me as his wife, I fully trust him as a good person. I have lived with him for over 30 years, and I have known him very well. I have known his character very well. He is not an opportunist or someone who seeks fame or power. And he is not a wicked or cruel person or to went around and make the arrest. President, the prosecutor, you may proceed.
Forgive me, Mr. President. This is evidence of character upon which I cannot cross-examine at this stage. I respectfully submit this is inappropriate and should not be allowed to continue. Madam Sosatiet is not a civil party giving some sort of statement at the end of her evidence. This, in my submission, is not in accordance with the rules and should not be allowed to continue.
President, the National Prosecutor, you may proceed. Thank you, Mr. President. I support the position by my international counterpart. This witness is a character witness, and the questioning session of her has now concluded, and she is not entitled to make a statement. And if she is allowed to make a statement, and with your permission, we would like to cross-examine her once again. President, Duty Council, you may proceed. Duty Council, my name is Mamrati, and good morning to Mr. President, Your Honors, and everyone in and around the courtroom. The witness would just like to recap what she has testified during the last few days. And some parties have accused her of lying to this court. And she would just like to make the statement to that effect, although her statement is a little bit off, but her intention is there. President, thank you, and Duty Council, your right and your appearance before this court is limited to discussing with the witness or your client in terms of self-incrimination. And in order to facilitate the proceeding of the testimony of the witness, and you are not here to defend the witness, please make sure you know of the role before this court. And you have been appearing before this court on several occasions, and you should have been very familiar with that. And I always remind you that please consult with your client in your capacity as a duty counsel in terms of any question that may lead to self-incrimination, and that you may advise your client of whether to respond or otherwise. Due to the controversy that has been raised by various parties, witness, you are not allowed to make any further statement. Regardless of that, we are thankful for your testimony. And when it comes to evaluating the weight of the evidence, it is the discretion of the judges of the bench in a professional capacity. And of course, we will consider all your testimony in conjunction with all other evidence that we have heard. And once again, we thank you for your testimony and your effort during these several sessions. Court officer, in collaboration with the VISU, please arrange for Madame Sosatiet to return to her residence. And likewise, the Duty Council, you are now excused from the court, and you may leave. Duty counsel. For the next witness, I am also a duty counsel. President, you may leave the courtroom now, and of course, when you are required, we will call you again as we have other matter at hand to discuss.
The President. Now I hand over the floor to the prosecutor to raise his application he made earlier. We want to hear a precise application from the prosecutor in relation to the strategy mobilized by the National Defense Council for Mr. Khieu Samphan in the course of the examination of the witness over the last few days. If you have any specific application, please make it as precise as possible, and the National Defense Council is advised to listen attentively to the application made by the prosecutor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My specific application is as follows. My application is that the court should sanction the National Council of Khieu Samphan for his performance during the testimony of So Suchiat. That application is made under Rule 35 of the Internal Rules. It is my respectful submission that he has knowingly and willfully interfered with the administration of justice, and that he has attempted to interfere with the evidence of Madam So Suchiat. My application, firstly, is that he should be given a formal rebuke or other punishment, and that should be placed on the court record. My second application is that his behaviour should be reported to the Cambodian Bar Association by this trial chamber. And my third application is that he should be given a warning formally by this court in the simplest terms that any repetition will lead to his removal from this trial chamber. It is my respectful submission that the court needs to send a message that such behaviour will not be tolerated and is not in accordance with international norms. I make the application also supported by Rule 22 of the Internal Rules, which says that in subparagraph 4, in the performance of their duties, lawyers shall be subject to Cambodian law on the statutes of the bar and recognised standards and ethics of the legal profession. They have an obligation to promote justice and the fair and effective conduct of proceedings. Can I deal specifically with the evidence from day 11th of June? I'm referring to the draft transcript. I'm referring to the evidence of So Suchiat, and I'm referring to time marker 15.09.22. That was where National Counsel for Khieu Samphan said that, and I quote, "I'd like to object," and he was saying that there was a misrepresentation of the words of the witness. He then said this witness testified to the effect that this was the times when their child was a month old. It was not the time period that Mr. Khieu Samphan went to stay with his family. You'll then recall, Mr. President and Your Honours, that my national counsel, Song Chawon, then started reading from the Khmer transcript, and she read this sentence: Later, he apparently returned from China. He stayed there to assist my child for approximately a month. In other words, my learned friend Song Chavorn was confirming that the Khmer transcript related to the length of time that Khieu Samphan had stayed with her and nothing whatsoever to do with the age of the child. I then come to the nub of this application, and can I preface this by saying that it is a gross breach of ethics on any analysis for a counsel during the testimony of a witness to start suggesting what the witness really meant by a previous answer. It is the function of a witness to give evidence in a court. It is not the function of counsel to try and explain what the witness means by their answers. And I quote from the transcript at 15.14.38. This is National Counsel for Khieu Samphan speaking, and I quote, "So I think it was a difference in the reading of the language. When Mr. Khieu Samphan came to assist her, she really meant that at the time her child was nearly a month old." The importance of this, Mr. President, is that he, through these words, was sending a signal to the witness, feeding information to the witness, signalling to her his view of what she really meant, and that is not the function of counsel. And the proof of that comes from the response from Ms. Sosochiat at 15.18.13, when she stated, "My husband returned from China, and when he arrived, my child was almost a month old." In other words, adopting counsel's suggestion that the evidence went to the age of the child rather than the other aspect. That is my application. Mr. President, can I assist by clarifying for you or any other of the judges of the court the application I make? Is it clear to the court? Is there anything else upon which I can assist?
The President, thank you. International Counsel for Mr. Khieu Samphan, Ato Vakan, you may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais prendre brièvement la...
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I will speak briefly, first of all, to denounce an attempt to intimidate, as I see it, our defense. It is ridiculous on the part of the prosecution. We have the impression that we are no longer dealing with professional prosecutors, but we are dealing with a jury that we can try to influence through such gesticulations. I believe that over the year and a half of the duration of this trial, if we were to blame this or that person, or to say that there have been objections from all sides, and your chamber is being overwhelmed by a plethora of decisions, I find this a pathetic attempt at intimidation. My learned colleague, with regard to the facts that have been denounced by the prosecutor, and we will respond to that, my learned colleague wanted to underscore in his objections the difficulties of interpretation faced by the chamber. Unfortunately, we face such difficulties, and it is no one's fault. The difficulty has to do with interpreting directly or live statements that are made. We have transcripts, we have video recordings. And I think that this chamber has other things to do than to favorably consider the application of the prosecutor. In that case, that application should be in writing. We will review the videos and we will consider as responsible lawyers any objections that were aimed at showing that there were problems of interpretation, I think that is all that has to be said at this point in time.
The President, Counsel Kung Samon, you may proceed. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you, the prosecutor, for presenting a position for the justice before this court. Concerning the specific instance you raised concerning my objection to the question put by the prosecutor thus far, I would like to respectfully submit to the chamber that in my capacity as a defense counsel for my client, I am duty-bound to ensure that the procedure is proper and appropriate, particularly in relation to the lines of questioning by my learned colleagues. For instance, in the testimony by Madame Sosajit, when there was a problem concerning reading the transcripts of the proceeding, I am duty-bound to raise the opinion in relation to the differences that may arise or discrepancies in the interpretation of the language, because the reading out of the transcript was in Khmer, and as Cambodian, when we read Khmer, we see the discrepancy. As Cambodians, when we read this, it is deviating from the real meaning of it, even though it is rendered into French or English. And I believe that the Cambodian speaker, the Khmer speakers, would understand this very well, other than our colleagues who do not speak Khmer. And I am supposed to provide correction when there is any problem in relation to the clarity of the language. And the civil party herself has already made the statement clear already in relation to that point. There is no intention whatsoever on my part to lead or to feed the witness with the information. And as for the application by the prosecutor to impose sanction on me, I would like to request to the prosecutor to make in writing, and I believe that the chamber is entitled to forward this application to the Bar Association of Cambodia. I am also a member of the Bar Association of the Kingdom of Cambodia, and if you make it in writing, then the Bar Association of the Kingdom of Cambodia will adjudicate on the case. And I also reserve my right to also file an application for the obstruction raised by the counsel in my performance of my job as a defense counsel. The President, thank you, counsel. Is there any other issue? You may proceed, Mr. Victor Kopé.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Although we feel we are not directly party in this dispute between the prosecution and the Khieu Samphan team, we nevertheless feel it quite important to go on the record in our voice to support fully the submissions made by the Khieu Samphan team on this matter. We have been silent today and yesterday, but we have also observed in our view, quite aggressive an intimidating way of interviewing this particular witness. And it seems now that the same intimidating way of questioning the witness has now turned to the National Council for Kyo Sampon. I find it quite unacceptable that this legal application is being made. There's absolutely no source or grounds for it. And again, we fully support the Kyo Sampon team on this matter. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The President, thank you. The time is now appropriate for adjournment. The chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes and we will resume by 11:15. After the break, the chamber will hear another witness, TCW 648. The court is now adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រុមឈរ